Hello, and welcome to the Hollow Earth Theory. Within the world of cryptids, paranormal, and odd things lies a few theories that pervade the genre. A lot of the ideas revolve around theories focused on how our planet Earth was shaped, or even what is really found in space. You will find some who believe the Earth is flat, or even that space consists of liquids. As I said, there are some theories that are a bit different. With this week's video, I bring to you one of the oldest ideas about our planet, and that is the Hollow Earth Theory. So without further ado, let's delve into the information about this topic. As the name states, the idea conveys that the Earth isn't a solid ball of rock with a magma core, but is in fact housing a hollow interior wherein some stories relay this inner world have some fantastic properties. In one way or another, this idea has had its roots in most mythologies, as well as, even to this day, some religions view the center of the earth as the realm of demons where people go after they die, i.e. the Greek underworld or hell. As controversial and stretching as that might sound, it isn't too far off from the origins of the Hollow Earth ideology. For the most part, all stories involving the center of the earth dealt with bad things such as strange creatures emerging from deep caves to wreak havoc on land dwellers in Irish mythology, and of course, simply being linked with purgatory. Throughout the world, there are many different types of cryptids and spirit beings that are believed to come from this area. Not to mention how many different cultures have their differing forms of what exists below us, land dwellers. For the sake of this video, I didn't want to focus on the religious ideologies about the Hollow Earth, as in a sense they can be a bit different, and dare I say, a tricky minefield to avoid. So let's get into the science and the reported encounters. The first known scientific theory comes from Edmund Halley, who is the same person who studied Halley's Comet. In 1692, he proposed the idea that the Earth actually consisted of one outer ring of crust with two separate rings inside, with a circular core at the center. Within this idea, he thought each ring had its own poles, gravity, and even different life forms living on each ring. Mr. Halley's theory was never given much thought in the scientific community, but he felt so strongly in it that he requested that he be posed holding the ring Earth while having his portrait painted. Granted, this thought was developed during a time of not understanding how the world works, as he also believed the aurora borealis was caused from gas escaping from inside the planet. But, to be fair, this was the first time that the solid Earth theory had an opposing view in the scientific realm. Jumping ahead to 1818, an Army officer and trader named John Cleves Sims Jr. made his theory known that the world was hollow, minus the rings of Halley's claim. Within this hypothesis, he stated that there were holes in either pole of the globe that could remain hidden due to the curvature of the Earth. Mr. Sims was so convincing that President John Quincy Adams was about to approve a trip to check out the poles, but left office before the endeavor could happen. One of the most famous and intriguing entries into the topic of this video came from a man by the name of Richard Admiral Byrd, Jr. As a bit of an oddity, I wanted to point out that even though his diary is well known, he is not even mentioned once on Wikipedia with the Hollow Earth theory. Admiral Byrd was a distinguished military man while serving in the U.S. Navy. At his death, he had garnered 22 citations and special commendations, including the Medal of Honor and a Distinguished Flying Cross, both dealing with heroism. As of making this video, Admiral Byrd stands as the most highly decorated officer in U.S. Navy's history. In his life, he made over 3 separate expeditions to the Antarctic. I mention all this due to the fact that his following encounter is often written off, even though he wasn't a man of ill repute or broad claims. Admiral Byrd reportedly kept a secret diary of all his flights and activities, and on the dates from February 19th to March 11th of 1947, he described a strange occurrence. He starts the diary with this phrase: "There comes a time when the rationality of men must fade into insignificance, and one must accept the inevitability of the truth. I am not at liberty to disclose the following documentation at this writing. Perhaps it shall never see the light of public scrutiny, but I must do my duty and record here for all to read one day. In a world of greed and exploitation of certain of mankind can no longer suppress that which is the truth." He then follows this with normal reports on how his airplane is running and his frequent radio checks to base camp. At 0910 hours, he notes discoloration in the snow and that his compasses are acting odd. Up until 1000 hours, he notes strange time discrepancies and finally notices a valley between mountains with green grass and what he at first claims was an elephant walking around, but later changed it to a mammoth. Admiral Byrd tried to radio back to base, but he couldn't get a signal. At 11:30 hours, he claimed to see a city and a shiny disc-shaped flying craft with them. It is at this point he realizes his plane is being controlled by something else, and he has landed at the city. Once out of his craft, he is met by the leader of the city, who expresses concern over our use of nuclear weapons. He described the people as being blonde, having Nordic features, and a Germanic accent. Richard was told that he was allowed to enter the valley, which is located in a hole in the North Pole, due to being a great and noble man. They claimed to be more advanced than us and stayed out of our affairs, but warned him that continued nuclear use would cause the destruction of the planet. After the meeting, he was returned to the surface where he could communicate with his home base. Once home, he reported everything that had happened to him at the Pentagon, where he was thoroughly checked out and sworn to keep his story secret from the public. In his last entry, he mentions keeping his promise of secrecy and hopes his writings will suffice to tell the story of which he could not. As a note, I obviously paraphrased a lot, since it is quite a long article, but I'll include a link in the description to a webpage that has written everything out in case you're curious. Now that was quite an interesting encounter, but I'm sure you're thinking the same thing as me. Is the diary legitimate? This seems to be a bit of an enigma, since the writings seem real, but people question the time frame. Some point out that on February of 1947, Admiral Byrd was in command of Operation High Jump, which would have made it impossible for him to be out flying around. This operation occurred from August 26, 1946 to February of 1947. The purpose was to establish a research base in the Antarctic. I couldn't find an exact end date, which would conclusively prove either point, since if he was in the Antarctic at the time, it would be impossible for him to make it to the North Pole, otherwise known as the Arctic. What is interesting is that the US military did originally plan on a base in the Arctic due to Soviet pressures, but decided on the Antarctic due to bad weather. Conspiracy theorists could state that the government actually did set up the base in the Arctic, and claimed it was in the Antarctic, especially when considering the whole mission was very well publicized. There are a few people who have a similar theory involving the Hollow Earth denizens. Some theorize that we have a civilization of people living here on Earth that are more advanced than us, but remain hidden. Commonly, this is linked with the idea that our ancient ancestors seem to have vast technology, but for some reason the advancement stopped for the most part up until a few hundred years ago. Another thought is that the Nordic people described could actually be the aliens, coincidentally named the Nordics. Both ideas fall within the description of the Hollow Earth people. As previously mentioned, many cultures claim their civilizations originated from ancestors that came out of deep caves, such as the Brazilian Indians and even the Incans. In fact, it is told that some of their people remain living inside the earth, and not meaning spiritually. So I know that was a lot to take in, but what are your thoughts on the topic? Do you think that people have too much time on their hands? Or do you think that with so many cultures describing the same thing, that there must be something to it? Let me know in the comments below. Also, be on the lookout for a giveaway I have planned. I have 4 interesting items up for grabs, but at the moment I'm not sure if I'll be doing it if we hit 20,000 subscribers, or if I'll be doing it sooner. Either way, keep your eyes peeled, as it could happen at any time, as I can be impatient when waiting for milestones. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to my channel for content like this. I promise to get back to cryptid style content soon. Also, if you would, could you give this video a thumbs up, as it greatly helps my channel out. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.